Welcome to the Zeroed In Podcast. I'm your host, John Lalonde, a seasoned real estate investment expert and former Marine recon sniper. This podcast is designed for those seeking effective strategies to increase revenue growth through strategic hiring, leadership, and effective tracking. Our focus here is clear and direct. We provide actionable insights from successful founders and growth experts. Whether you're establishing a new business or aiming to scale an existing one, our episodes offer the essential advice you need for practical business growth. Lock and load, zero in, and get ready to scale. Welcome to the Zeroed In Podcast. Today we've got Patrick Meyer. Patrick is in our advanced coaching group, and he hit me up the other day. He was like, "Hey man, just locked up. He's got 200 and how much revenue again? Set to close next quarter? $224,000 in revenue set to close next quarter. So I was like, man, we got to get you on the podcast and figure out the secret sauce. What are you doing that had those results? So Patrick, tell us a little bit about how you got started in real estate and what market you're in.
Yeah. So I got started in real estate in the beginning of 2018. I moved down to Charleston, South Carolina, which is my market, and kind of started out just as an agent. I didn't know anybody. I had a little bit of a background because my father was a builder, or it still is a builder. And I knew a little bit about real estate. I knew enough to know that I think that I would be good at it and I was interested in it, but didn't really realize the work that it required to actually pin down clients and sell properties. So I was an agent for just over 3 years, just doing agent work. My best year was 2020. I did around 4.4 to 4.6 million in sales, which equated to about like 16 homes or something like that in the Charleston area.
Nice, man. And then what made you decide to go from being a real estate agent? I mean, some people just stick with the real estate agent gig for life. What made you decide to get into wholesaling?
Yeah, it was actually a client of mine. His name was Will Gibbs. He's a great guy. And he was looking for flip opportunities in the greater Charleston area. And I ended up being his buyer agent, and we locked up a couple deals together. He kind of walked me through the entire process. He was super transparent about his profit margin, about the amount of rehab that these properties would require, and kind of guided me through that process. And I got to kind of be his agent, and work those deals alongside him. So once I saw him close a few of those, I really started to see like the light at the end of the tunnel and kind of figure out that's kind of more where I wanted to be versus just working day to day as an agent.
Yeah, when you see what they're buying them for and you see what they're selling them for, you're like, wait a second, there might be a little bit more to this. So,
yeah, for sure.
So when you got started, walk me through what that looked like. How did you get started in wholesaling and what did you start doing right off the gate?
Yeah, so my first ever deal actually came in as a real estate like listing lead because I was still an agent at the time. And it was a pretty distressed property. The lady needed to move. The house was just too much upkeep for her. It was super outdated. The roof needed to be redone and she needed to act quickly. And she was asking like her suggested list price was like it was already a deal there. And I was just kind of starting to understand like what I needed to buy things at for them to be an actual deal to an investor. And I just told her, I said, look, I could list it for 180,000. That's what she wanted to list it for. But I knew if I got it for 165, I could probably wholesale it for like 190 to like 199. And I was like, what if I just buy it from you? She's like, can you do that? I was like, I think so. So I put it under contract at 165. I think we were under contract for like 45 to 60 days. I did an open house the next week, assigned it for 199. They came back for a small price reduction of like $2,500 or something, which was fine with me, and ended up closing it. And I think we netted, after paying the buyer agent commission, I think we netted around 27,000 on it.
Nice. And you got that done a lot faster than and a listing would be able to do it. So that kind of opened your eyes into it. You got your first lead, which is great. I never even thought about that. If you're a listing agent, you're trying to get into wholesaling, you could come across a lead that is already ready, right? You don't have to spend any money on marketing, which is what you did. Walk me through what you did from there.
Yeah. So I immediately, after I closed that, I was like, all right, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I went ahead and got Launch Control, which is a SMS blasting platform. Now, this is back in 2020 or 2021. So SMS was a little bit more gangbuster back then. You could just like shoot out whatever you wanted. Yeah. Yep. So I was sending out, I don't know, probably around, I think it was only like 600 to 900 texts a day. I had like the lower plan back then.
Okay.
And the big bottleneck was I was still trying to be an agent at that time too. And I kind of found myself, it was still kind of like in the middle ground where I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I ended up meeting a buddy of mine who was a teacher at the time, and he knew about wholesaling. We understood that his constraint was kind of my, flexibility. I had the time flexibility, but I didn't have the amount of manpower to do what two people could do. So I kind of had the time flexibility. He was pretty good at sales. He was able to cold call in his spare time, and we kind of ended up partnering together in 2021, and we worked together all through 21 and 22, wholesaling and flipping together.
Nice. How much revenue did you do roughly, like 21? I'll say like over the next like 3 years, like roughly what were you averaging 21, 22, and 23?
So in 21, if you include the wholesale that I did by myself and stuff that we did around, I think around 90,000
Okay.
to like the second quarter or the second half of 21. And then 2022, I think we did like 160,000 or something like that.
Nice. Okay.
Which wasn't, we weren't crushing it by any means. We were living comfortably, and we were kind of, starting to get the momentum going, at the end of 2022.
Yeah. And then 2023, how'd that year look for you? That was just
So
last year.
I ended up branching out. Actually, we ended up amicably, going separate ways. 2023 was pretty tough. I'm not going to lie to you.
It's
Kind
tough
of
for
splitting up
everybody.
from him. Yeah, yeah. It was a weird time to go off on your own, I think. So the first quarter of 23, I hired an acquisitions manager. I was doing everything by myself up until then. And we did, I think his first month, we did 20,000 in revenue from like, I was doing like 5K in revenue a month before I hired him. Just like a little nitpicky deal here and there. And then it was pretty tough. I took down a flip I told you about that I shouldn't have. I lost a lot of money on that. Flipped a couple properties, but it was a really down year for me. I think I ended up taking home like 60 grand or something like that.
Okay. So 60 grand in 2023. And then you've already got over $200,000 already set to close next quarter. So let's talk about that shift. That's what we want to talk about on today's podcast is
Yeah.
what did you start implementing to be able to go from, $60,000 to, $240,000 lined up. I know you've already done some big deals this quarter as well. What started shifting for you to make that change?
Yeah, man. So I had been wanting to get into some coaching program because I knew that. I was going on YouTube at first and just looking at every video just looked the same. It was all just like stuff that you already knew, like how to cold call, how to prospect, how to pull a list. And I was really
Yeah.
needing something that was higher level, to really understand how to get my organization off the ground. And that's kind of when I came across your stuff, which was like, actually, I saw you through Ari Simply. You were on one of the webinars, and you were like one of the ones that kind of stood out to me because you were super transparent with your sales process.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I was lacking was a sales process. So that was the first thing that I started to identify as a rock that I needed to go ahead and tackle. And I think that was the first thing that really led to the success now was kind of honing in that sales process. But to backtrack, saw you on Simply and then, subscribed to your coaching program right after we had our best month, which was 80,000 in revenue in May.
Nice. What were some of your like reservations about joining the coaching program? Because there's so many coaching programs out there, and we know that most of them are garbage, right?
Right.
Some of them aren't even wholesaling anymore at
Yeah.
all. They're not even running businesses, but they're teaching it. And there's a lot of people that, I had one message me the other day. He's like, "Hey, I'll teach you how to wholesale." And I asked him, like, "What are your numbers?" He's like, wouldn't show any of his numbers, right?
Right.
So how did you feel comfortable enough to go, okay, I'm going to actually invest in this training versus like all the other programs that are out there?
I mean, first of all, yeah, just to kind of go over that again, you hear like all the horror stories of people just putting ridiculous amounts of money down into these courses and not really getting anything from it.
Yeah.
One of the big things that I liked about you is, you already told me it was a smaller group, and I was looking for something like that. I really didn't want to be like a big like a number on the screen. I wanted one-on-one time with you. I wanted to actually have someone I could text or call and be able to reach out to if I had questions. And also, you vetted me more than any of any other coaching program because basically they were like, "Does your Amex go through?" and you can join.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas with you, you wanted to see what my business looked like, what the numbers were, specifically why I wanted to be a wholesaler versus being an agent because you found out I had some success doing that.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like a good fit, man. It was definitely also about timing too. It was just the right time for me to make that move and step up and get some help.
How do you know when it's the right time to start going and investing in yourself versus, oh my gosh, I'm nervous, like this isn't the right
Yeah.
time? How did you know that it was the right time to really start investing in yourself?
I just started seeing a couple holes in my business that I wasn't really happy with. And there was really no high level answers to the questions that I had. I was looking around for stuff for free, and all I was getting was in it was like sent to like a sales funnel, basically, where I would, you know what I mean, like get some
Yeah.
content, and they're like, well, if you want to know more, click this link. And I was like, dang, that's probably where the information is that I really want. But yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I really can't describe it. You know, like I said, I had some holes that I had identified, one with the sales process, but it was really just something in me just said, hey, like do this now, or else you're not going to have another couple years to figure it out. Like you need to do this now.
Yeah, sometimes you get to that point, right, where you realize, okay, if we keep doing the things that we're doing now, the business is going in a downward trend and something needs to change, right? The market
Yeah.
becomes a little bit more difficult. And, I'm one of the only people that will tell you wholesaling is not necessarily easy, right? It's not the easiest business in the world. There's probably easier ways to make a living, but if you can get it automated, it's extremely rewarding once you can actually build the systems, build the processes. And you have to be in a community full of other people that are actually doing the thing. I think that's another huge issue that we run into is you get in these communities full of like 50 people, and 35 of them are just getting started, and they're asking you about a contract, and you're like, okay, well, I've already got all of that stuff. I need the high level questions, like how do I fix my sales process, how do I automate my CRM, everything
Yeah.
like that, right? So let's talk about the sales process thing, man. What were you doing before? Like before you joined the program, what kind of scripts were you using? Were you using a script? What were you saying to sellers?
Yeah, it was a personalized script that me and my old partner had come up with, along with the help of an old acquisitions rep that we had. We all kind of teamed up on it, created our own script. And it, like I said, we did some revenue, we did some numbers, but it by no means was, like a magical script or anything like that. It was pretty basic.
Yeah.
We were very transactional, I'll say that, compared to what we're doing now. So
Yeah.
our
Give me an
script was
example so I can understand what you mean by that.
yeah. Yeah, and I wish I had it, but it was very direct. So it really it revolves around the property and not so
Mm,
much around the person that owned the property. It's kind of the best way to put it. So like when we would greet somebody on the phone, we were talking about the property within a minute or two of that conversation,
yeah.
which as you know now is not the sales process that we have.
What would that
Um
do to sellers when you would start just talking about like the condition? Because so many people do that. And a lot of people
yeah.
teach that. Like the most famous wholesaling coaches teach that exactly. It's like the first thing you go into is like, hey, how are you? Tell me about the property. Right. So
Yeah.
what was that doing to sellers when you were doing that?
We sounded just like everyone else, and they were kind of dropping us in that bucket with other wholesalers in the area. Charleston's by no means the most competitive market in the country, but it's a very competitive market, and it's not a very big one. So a lot of wholesalers are talking to the same leads, maybe even more so than some of the bigger areas, just because by proxy of how small the population is here. So you really had to focus on differentiating, yourself from the other people. But when you just go straight into it, one, we sound like everyone else, but two, they just want to shop you around now because they feel like you're doing that with them when you're being so transactional. They feel like you're just looking at them as a property. So now you're just some buyer, you know?
Yeah. And so what shifted? Like once you learned the sales process, how did the seller's reaction shift for you? What did you start experiencing when you got away from going straight into the property and started getting them to open up?
Well, I want to say, just to kind of go back a little bit, I eventually and unfortunately my acquisitions manager at the time when I adopted this, we didn't necessarily see eye to eye on where we were going with the sales process. So we ended up parting ways in July of this year, and I ended up taking over the sales calls, full time. And what that allowed me to do was utilize the stuff that you were teaching me and really kind of backtrack and figure out, okay, this is exactly how I need to say these things.
Mhm.
So the difference is, I mean, now these people on the calls, like I said, I mean, I had people, crying and opening up to me and telling me way more about their situation than I would ever know based on the old thing. And I know talk time isn't the end all be all, but when you see your calls quadruple or triple in duration, but your contracts are also doubling and how many contracts you're locking up, I would say there's probably some correlation there, with the
Yeah.
quality of conversation and then the ability to lock up the deals. So people were just being transparent with me now.
Can you give some examples of, like some live examples? I know you were saying, man, when I was watching YouTube videos, I was looking at all the free stuff, like this podcast is going to be free. And so can
Yeah.
we give the listeners some examples of like, maybe what you were saying right at the beginning before versus what you're saying now to actually get some sellers to open up? Maybe just like the first introduction of the script.
Yeah. Yeah. Even a small thing like, yeah, what made you want to look into this further based on what you saw on our website? Or, what was it about the conversation you had with assistant name here that made you want to speak further about this? And we never even asked that. Like to
Yeah.
begin with, like in our old sales process, we didn't care, to be honest with you. Like we didn't even know to care about why specifically they were trying to go the cash buyer route versus just listing it on the MLS. We're also just addressing a lot of objections up front now. Again, just like I said, like why not just list it on the MLS or why not just rent it out? These are things we're more so challenging people, not in a bad way, but we're kind of really trying to get a gauge of why exactly they're looking for us as a solution as opposed to a traditional sale. And that alone has allowed us to have more open conversations with people because usually once you say that, they say, well, I need to sell it fast. Oh, what do you mean sell it fast? And you're asking questions like that. And then you start to figure out, well, they actually have a tax lien and they're about to lose the house in a couple months. As an example, we had a lady last year that we didn't use this on. Unfortunately, the deal ended up blowing up because she never told us that the house was going to auction at the end of December.
Hmm.
And we ended up losing the deal. And we were like, why didn't you tell us? You didn't trust us to tell us that maybe, versus
Yeah.
now a lot of people are very forthcoming with that information.
Yeah, when you go straight into the transactional, like they don't want to tell you, they don't even trust you, right? You
Right.
sound just like everybody else. Why would they trust you if the only thing you did is call them, ask them about the condition of the house and their time frame around selling, and then say, okay, cool, I'm going to send you a contract over for $140,000, right?
Right.
They're not going to trust you. But when you learn how to get the sellers to open up, when you learn how to get the sellers to start selling themselves to you, there's a new level of trust. Like you said, some people are going to cry on the phone. Some people are going to get emotional. And that's what happens when you build that level of trust. They are trusting you to tell you, hey, these are my problems because I know you can solve them.
Yeah.
Right. And I always think it's funny when you hear people that are like, oh, I don't want to tell a salesperson anything. Like for me personally, when I get on a sales call with anyone, I'm very open about my problems because I'm like, hey, can you solve these? Right.
Right.
It's just the way that you look at sales differently. I'm like, okay, this person, I'm going to tell them what I'm dealing with so I can figure out if they can solve them. And then their job is to be able to figure out if they can solve them or not. Right. So
Right.
it's a little bit of a shift. Now, what about process stuff? Can you walk me through maybe some of the process things you've changed? We talked a little bit about sales process, but what about like systems in your CRM, how you're following up with your leads? What does that look like now compared to what it looked like before you joined the program?
Absolutely. So, I was actually a little bit embarrassed about how our CRM looked. I remember on our first call, I had to show you, but I really didn't want to. 3 days, speed to lead, leads being called once or twice within a month or after a month of having them in the CRM, stuff just kind of getting lost in translation. Um, yeah, man. Now our so everyone gets triple dialed, which we're about to change. We're going to change that to 3 times a day, not 3 times back to back. But
Yep.
we're way more aggressive with our sales process now. And part of the reason why we weren't beforehand was we were scared to be aggressive. We were scared of the reaction we were going to get from the people that we called 40 times in 10 days or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, not a single person that we've worked with, and many of these people we had to call X and Y amount of times to get them on the phone to get them started with the process. They've never once brought up how many times we've called or texted them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and I would say that's definitely step one to our success now is we're just if you come in as a lead, you're going to be taken care of on our team. Speed to lead, really trying to hone that into being under 3 minutes and tracking these things and going over these things weekly with my lead manager. That's been a huge boost in why we're doing better, I think now.
Why is speed to lead so important? Like, why does it matter if you call them in the first 3 minutes versus calling them like, some people just a lead comes in, they'll call them within a few hours. Why is the speed to lead so important?
I think these people are talking to a lot of people for one, and I think also you can almost pick up off the momentum that they had on that previous call because I do a lot of outbound. So they just get off the phone talking to somebody, a pretty base level conversation, mind you. Just kind of getting pre-qualified. And then right after that, they're diving a little bit deeper with us. And I think we kind of roll off the back of the momentum that they had on the first call. And that allows us to kind of keep the train going, if you will, kind of see that process through versus they're like, oh yeah, I think I talked to somebody a few hours ago or God forbid a few days ago, right? If
Yeah.
we're doing it like we used to.
Yeah, and even more so, like if you're working inbound leads, you're getting leads from like paper lead companies.
Yeah.
They're never going to be more motivated than when they just filled out the form. Like they're actively looking, or they just clicked on the ad. People just forget, right? Think about when you see an ad, you click on something, somebody calls you the next day, you're barely gonna remember.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people. I'd have salespeople in the past when we weren't tracking our processes nearly as well as we are now. We're like, oh, they said they never filled out a form, but they filled it out yesterday. Like,
Right.
well, yeah, they just forgot. You have to remind them that they filled it out. You give them some details about their property, or, exactly maybe what they saw. And then they're like, oh, yeah, okay, I remember that, right? And they'll actually
Yeah.
go through. That's why speed to lead is one of the most important metrics to track on a process basis, besides like your basic KPI conversions, because it shows you how efficient, and then your cash conversion cycle also decreases when you do that as well. So love that you mentioned speed of lead. What else did you start doing?
Yeah, well, just tracking my numbers in general, just like you said, the KPI tracking. Luckily, got some great tools from you with the calculators and everything that I've been able to implement. And it's so much easier to scale when you actually know what you need to scale. I know that sounds like it's like obvious,
Yeah.
but it's not. I swear. I kind of know now what to expect. Like I'm planning on bringing in a third cold caller. I know what I should be able to expect. What that third caller will give me in return. Right. 40 leads a month. It should be 1 to 2 contracts a month per caller. And I was just kind of blindly scaling. And that's kind of why I kind of fell backwards in 2023. I was actually spending more money than I had in 2022, but I wasn't tracking the right things, and I was just kind of throwing money out there to see what stuck. And unfortunately, not a lot did, when I was doing
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, that's one of the things, and Hermosi talks about this a lot, of knowing what your bottleneck is and just viciously attacking it. Once you
Mhm.
know if your lead to net lead ratio is down, okay, that's the bottleneck in your business. What do I need to do to fix my lead to net lead ratio? What are some of the KPIs that you're tracking now that you weren't tracking before?
Yeah, well, basically any of them.
Okay, so you weren't tracking
I was
anything before.
Nah, I was like running and gunning. I was really just checking like my P&L every month. I was like, oh, you made money, cool. And that's basically what I decided. But yeah, so now it's like, how many leads to a qualified lead? How many qualified leads to appointments? How many appointments to offers? How many offers to contracts? That's kind of the bread and butter of it. We also got more granular and we did how many cold call leads per contract versus how many SMS leads per contract. When I was doing outbound texting, I've kind of paused that for now, but just to kind of see where the better ROI was coming from. And it was coming from cold call, but also the sales cycle, because I will say that the text leads were converting faster for us. And I know you're a strong proponent of kind of having multiple buckets, right?
Yep.
So you kind of have your fast, cash conversion, your medium, and your long term. And again, if you're not tracking what those sources are going to be, you don't really know what to kind of dial in to get those, to get the medium bucket or to get the short term bucket. But
Yeah.
whereas I know, like, okay, if I need a quick deal, let's send out these SMS blasts real fast, right? Because they have a 37-day conversion cycle versus 68 with our cold call. So that's been very helpful too.
I love that, man. What else have you learned inside of the program that you're like, wow, I didn't even know, maybe you didn't know it exists before, or that really helped kind of propel your business to where, you've got almost 100K a month lined up for Q1 already, which
Yeah.
is over double what you've done, in the last year alone. So what are
Yeah.
some other things that you learned to allow you to get to that point?
Well, I also learned a little bit about myself. Like I said, I kind of had to step back into the sales role, which I think was actually a great decision and really helped me out a lot. But I also learned that I had some flaws with my sales too. I wasn't quite the badass that I thought I was when it came to being a salesman. The big thing was just tonality. I could a lot of times say the right thing, but it's really how you say it that really wins people over, or vice versa. And I wasn't doing that. And you kind of pointed out on a few of the calls that I brought to you. So I started to be more mindful of that. But knowing that I had that issue, I also started to push that onto my lead manager too and say, hey, be conscious of your tonality with this. And I kind of used what I learned about myself and applied that with my training with my team. So that was a tremendous help as well.
Man, that's fantastic. This has all been gold. I hope everybody listening to this, if you've been on YouTube University, which can be helpful, there's a lot of like great stuff on
For
YouTube.
sure.
Hopefully you've got some stuff out of this call that you can go and implement today. We talked about sales process, some little things that you can put inside of the beginning of your call to start getting sellers to sell themselves to you right at the beginning. We talked about speed to lead, tracking your KPIs. It's so important. Your lead to net lead to appointment, right? Appointment to offer, offer to contract, contract to close. Being able to understand those metrics so you're not just blindly looking at your P&L and then reactively going, okay, well, did I make money or did I not? You know if you're going to be making money next month by your leading metrics. So Patrick, man, that has been incredible. Someone has leads, but they are having trouble closing them. Maybe they've got a CRM. They want to partner with you to close some deals. How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook or on Instagram, PJ Meyer 93, Facebook, Patrick Meyer, or you can just reach out to my phone number, 843-732-3043. That's where you can find me.
There we go. That's a bold strategy. He gave you guys his phone number. So if you
Yeah,
guys
just
are
reach
in,
out.
if you guys are in Charleston, you guys have deals. This dude's a savage. He's been through the program. He's got NEPQ trained, knows how to get sellers to open up, and he's got over $200,000 set to close next quarter already. We still have an entire month to go, dude. I think you're going to break $300,000. I think you'll
I
get
hope
to
so.
that. I think you'll
Yeah.
get to that 100K a month. So if you guys have deals you need help with, make sure you reach out to Patrick. Patrick, man, thank you for coming on, sharing some of the sauce. It's Black Friday here, so we're going to get out of here. This is the Zeroed In Podcast, and we are signing off.
See you guys.